I'm going to talk to you about a project that we're working on in Bridgend, which is the Caerau Decarbonisation Project. My name is Michael Jenkins and I work for Bridgend Council. The Caerau is a village in South Wales. It's a former mining village and typically suffers from the problems that you would normally associate with a post-industrial community, really. It's the 5th most deprived ward in Wales, according to the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, and has those statistical indicators that you would associate with a deprived area, really, sort of high unemployment, low educational attainment, poor health, sort of with long-term debilitating health conditions, high fuel poverty. As you can see from the photograph, the housing there is typically terraced housing. It's the dominant housing type, sort of Victorian, Edwardian housing, and it typically has the problems that you would associate with those kind of houses, really. So poor energy efficiency, damp problems, etc. We've been working on the decarbonisation project for several years now, probably since about 2015, really. There were a number of drivers for doing that project, really. There was what we perceived to be, anyway, market failure in the area. There were high levels of fuel poverty with no real solutions emerging as to how we would address that. So we took that really as being a market failure for those residents that were suffering from that fuel poverty, really. And it was, how could we address that? And the wider question, I suppose, which was, how do you decarbonise a deprived community? There doesn't seem to be any natural answers out there, no templates for us to follow. So that was a key driver for us wanting to do something in the village that addressed those two problems, really. But that said, there's a number of assets in the area as well as in terms of local resources. So the village sits on extensive mine workings associated with the former colliery there, and we know from some of the boreholes tests that we've done that those workings are flooded, and that water is consistently at about 21 degrees, which is an extremely valuable asset. Plus, the hills above the village are covered in wind turbines, so there's another really important asset there as well. And I suppose a big driver for us doing the project was really about economic regeneration, and it was kind of, how could we actually bring real place-based benefits to the village beyond just lowering fuel bills by 10 or 15%, really. How could, by doing this project, could we actually send out a ripple effect and look at different areas of the village and sort of what by products we could generate, really. Sort of we're trying to develop a local food growing project alongside the heat project as an example of that benefit, really. So those are all the reasons why we're particularly delivering this project. What are we trying to do? It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So we're looking at different solutions for different parts of the village, really. We see mine water as a really important asset, but there are a lot of economic, commercial and technical risks, really, around mine water at the moment, but we want to overcome those. So we're trying to focus the project around some buildings that are perhaps best suited at the moment to look at mine water as a viable heat resource. Things like the schools, some of the community buildings. So we are trying to develop a mine water demonstrator in the village. We're also looking at developing a heat network in the village. On the western side of the village, there is a former council housing estate, which is a mixture now of social and private housing, and that seems to lend itself quite well to a heat network. And we'd like to look at mine water or ground source heat, really, as a source of heat for the homes in that particular area. And then when we look at the larger terraced housing in the village, we're sort of leaning towards individual home solutions there, which is a mixture, really, of maybe targeted retrofits, smart controls within the home, as well as low carbon tech like air source heat pumps or hybrid heat pumps, batteries or PV, really. And it's a real mixed approach there as to how we approach that, but it's very much data driven. So it's really a mixed solution for the village, really, which is how we're approaching the decarbonisation. With such a project, the community engagement is really, really important, as I suppose it's quite obvious to understand, I guess. We've created a citizens advisory group there, which is composed of those people in the village that are particularly keen on decarbonisation and energy, as well as influential local figures. So the landlord of the local pub, the vicar, town and community councillors, a representative from the school, the community group representative, and we use that really as a barometer to understanding what people think about what we're trying to do. We've used public exhibitions and letter drops. Social media is an important way for the people to communicate within the village, and we've used that. Cardiff University are doing a valuable bit of social science research for us, which is a longitudinal study which has them revisiting about 20 families every year and asking them about thoughts on the project, but also about the wider energy system and what they think. And we're currently running a heat as a service pilot, which is really engaging with 50 homes this winter to start putting sensors in and start gathering a real good picture around how they actually use energy, sort of where, when, how much. And that's really teasing out a lot of important information for us, and we're going to use that data to design the solutions that we actually deploy within the project. So where are we going next? We're negotiating with the wind farm operator to bring a private wire into the village, so we've got a low cost source of electricity coming in. We're developing business cases for the individual solutions. We've secured near 7.5 million ERDF funding, which means the operational costs and the area with the most risk is. Capital costs are covered, but we've got to kind of make these schemes work through their operating phase, and how do we make them cost effective, really. And we're continuing to run the heat as a service trial to gather that data and then transition people next winter onto a managed service with their existing gas boiler assets, and then transition them to something else the following winter, which could be the individual home solutions, the heat network, or whatever's appropriate, really. But the heat as a service trial is quite important, both as an engagement tool, but also for us to understanding how people heat their homes, so we can design solutions that really work for them. And then we're finally then developing a procurement process to actually start to procure some of these solutions, but with the added value, we hope, of generating local economic value. So how can we develop supply chains that support local jobs, really, in delivering the kind of solutions that we're going to put into these homes? Thank you for listening, and any questions, I would be happy to take them. Thank you.